Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great privilege and honor to have been invited to participate in this Future of Human Rights Forum. I congratulate the organizers on this very timely initiative because, unfortunately, human rights, and particularly the violations thereof, continuously present on the agenda of mankind and in need of discussion, debates, and publicity in order to focus the attention on the problems.
This is not an ordinary celebration of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, in the sense that the Future of Human Rights Forum is aimed at breaking new ground. If we look around the planet, I've served for the last 13 years in several duty stations around the world, and I can tell you that what I saw on the ground had very little resemblance to what I read in the literature and on the website.
Something is missing, though. And I think what is missing is a stronger, better understanding and a stronger way of addressing the ways in which the environment underpins the fundamental human rights of people, particularly of the poor. All food in the world comes from ecosystems. If that capacity of the ecosystems is lost, the right to food is impossible to attain. We have the tools at hand today to make this environmental agenda stronger. We just have to use it in a more creative way.
What I'm proposing is to create an international law. Essentially, it's the implementation mechanism to create governance of the human right to life, but not just the human right to life, it's also about the Earth's right to life. Ecocide really is the missing fifth crime against peace. It's not just about environmental law or human rights law. This is about corporate law. This is about creating governance at the very highest level on corporations, but most importantly, not just the fictional personhood, legal personhood, the so-called corporation. This is about attaching responsibility at the very top end. Now, there are a number of routes to do this. The ICC, the International Criminal Court, can expand the remit of the Rome Statute of its own accord, that we know. Or it can be done by a head of state standing up and calling for an amendment to the Rome Statute. When that happens, all it requires is a 2/3 majority of existing signatories. Just 81 people in the world can make this an international law.
For the most part, a lot of the developments that have taken place since the Universal Declaration have been focused on dealing with the rights of the child or other specifics. Today, we're looking at a long-range view, and we're considering some plans that have a vision for where we want to end up. And what I'm going to share with you is this idea of ending up with an international Bill of Rights. What's missing is law. It's law. It's the ability to go in and get an order and stop some atrocious thing from happening before it happens. What we're saying is, please participate with us in thinking through what would be in an international Bill of Rights.
Every right must be accompanied by a remedy. Now, many will argue that in international human rights treaties, the remedy is provided at the domestic level by the individual states, and you don't need an international court to have a remedy. But if the rights are guaranteed internationally, then why shouldn't the remedies be guaranteed internationally as well?
So what we have actually done is we've built a construct where we have a legal prohibition, where we have mechanisms for enforcement, but we content ourselves very often to the fact that it's a legal prohibition. And we have to formulate, maybe in a much more radical way, what we want is not only implementation, we want eradication of torture. Because we do know that prevention will not work if we never ensure that in the history of the lifetime of a country, there is at least once an event of accountability.
We were arguing for an international criminal court, the establishment of an Office of the High Commissioner, and for a World Court on Human Rights. 2 of those have now been achieved. This is the last big outstanding piece, I think, of the UN architecture that hasn't been achieved.
As we sit here as individuals, as world citizens of an emerging world society, we do not exist in international law, basically. The United Nations, which was, proclaimed, the Charter proclaimed in the name of we the peoples, is a club of the executive branches of government, which is fine, and we have to acknowledge the importance of governments and the executive branches. However, in this emergent world society, this is no longer sufficient. We need to give a voice to minorities, to the political opposition. In the end, that's the eventual goal, a commission and an assembly overall, an assembly that is composed of directly elected delegates.
Somebody mentioned public opinion this morning and empowering the civil society to stand against human rights violations. That's been a strategy that we've used particularly in the post-conflict context. But I'm not so sure. Look at the Arab Spring, where the people, all of them rose against human rights violations, but look at the impact or what the outcome has been.
To reach that audience in the future, we have to move away from text and go to images. That's the future for the information. There's no doubt about that in my mind. Now, the only thing is that human rights defenders are obviously by far the most important element. It's not to play down any of you in the audience, any of my friends who worked in the UN or the national human rights commissions and councils. All this big industry of human rights institutions is nothing if there are no human rights defenders working at the grassroots level. Human rights defenders can be exploited more. Not only we need to protect them, we need to exploit them in the sense of making them role models to inspire others.
Early on, you mentioned that a lot of the human rights defenders will end up getting framed for crimes that they didn't commit. How exactly can that be prevented?
Never accept an envelope from the policeman, because you accept the envelope and the next day or an hour later you're arrested. They offer a drink and then your fingerprints are on the glass. So these are ways, these are small tricks that the police are doing, and if you're aware of it, you could at least try and stop it. Another one that the Joint Mobile Group in Russia, for example, has on purpose chosen a completely opaque governance structure. In the field offices where the real work is done, you don't know who is the boss. You come into the office, there's a group of 3-4 men and women, young lawyers working, and you have no idea who is the boss. But it's on purpose. Because the moment they identify this is the coordinator, the person is more likely to be kidnapped or killed. So there are all kinds of strategies that the human rights defenders themselves find, because they are the ones in trouble. And if we can help them, not so much by saying how they have to do it, they know, but perhaps to make sure that that information is quickly transferred to others, that they get the resources to fight back. These are the things we can do.
One of the things that we're trying to do now is to start a program on visionary leadership, not for the state leaders as well as corporate leaders, like this whole, the principle of social responsibility. And I think that's something we can do, is to really work with them to create a human rights conscience so that they become better leaders and not violate human rights. And this visionary leadership program that we are starting is, for leaders at all levels, right down to the community level.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're from the Aga Khan Academy in Mombasa, and we're here to present about the M23 rebel situation in Congo.
The M23 rebel group are known as the Congolese Revolutionary Army, or also the March 23 rebel group, and they are based in the eastern areas of the Democratic Republic of Congo.
We also have quite a few effects on human rights. They infringe on a lot of people's human rights. So the first main one is probably murder. And you can see that they murder a lot of civilians, especially the Tutsis, which are from Rwanda, who came into Congo. And then they murder about 44 daily, according to the UN.
This meeting is all about the future, and boy, you're it. So thanks again, and you're welcome here anytime, and another notch on the agenda. Thank you very much indeed.
This dialogue is to engage you, the participants, to get your perspectives on what would be actionable ideas for strengthening enforcement of human rights. It is also an opportunity for the participants, for you, to share your stories and what has been successful and what questions you still have on how to make human rights accessible to all. We will ask you to come up with 5 concrete actionable ideas, and these ideas will be clustered on these boards, and you will have an opportunity at the end of the clustering to come back and invest on the ideas that you think should be moved forward.
And on the board with the blue dots there, lots of dots were on the need to reintroduce values, intrinsic values, ethical values, and I would like to add human values, which was not listed on that list. And I really think we need to take a step back. What are the root causes of the non-respect for human rights in general and torture in particular, and all forms of violence? We need to state loud and clear that violence is unacceptable, violence is immoral, violence is absurd, and violence is abnormal, and that the norm is not violence, but the norm is peace.
After all we heard and all we collected during this day, clearly so much more to do. We have put on the screen the results of the discussions that you had. So this is what you propose. This is what you think. I believe this is a very important, very rich reflection on various substantive initiatives that need to be focused upon, among them the Parliamentary Assembly, the International Bill, ECOCIDE issue, the environment issue, the World Court. And then on the institutional side, brilliant interventions on the need to address core human rights issues that still exist.
One could see how wide the spectrum is when it comes to human rights. Water, Great Lakes in Africa, torture, mediation, and what have you, transnationals, and so on and so forth. I say like they do in Geneva, un grand merci. Monsieur, dames.